To fully understand Argentina's role during World War II, you must first take a look at their history. During World War I, Argentina sold food to both the Germans and the French. From this they made amazing profits. In 1939, during the months before World War II started, when countries were choosing sides, Argentina had chosen to remain neutral by selling food to both the Allies and the Axis countries. This would make them far wealthier than choosing only one side to support. The Argentinian government had persuaded the Allies, Axis, and their own people to believe that they planned to go through the war as a neutral country. However, the government secretly supported the Axis more, while the majority of the people supported the position of the Allies, but they were content on remaining neutral. However, the government had different plans. The Argentinian government remained legitimately neutral for the first few months of the war, before making small changes to their schooling system to include German beliefs as a way to influence the Argentinian mindset. After the first year of the war, the United States discovered that Argentina was allowing German Gestapo agents into their country without penalty. And about halfway through the war, Argentina allowed Nazi U-boats to form a black fleet in Argentine waters. At this point, the United States was very angered that Argentina had gone against their pledge to neutrality. Argentina apologized formally, yet still collaborated with Nazi forces. And at the end of the war, Argentina helped approximately 9,000 Nazi war criminals escape American prosecution by allowing them to hide in their country. America did not find this out until later in the 20th century, when secret Odessa files were found. Now join me as the mystery unfolds. Argentina entered the era of World War II amidst political turmoil. The people and emerging powers were working to overthrow President Ramon Castillo. Castillo maintained Argentina's state of neutrality and declared support for both the Allies, the United States, Great Britain, France, Russia, and the Axis powers of Germany, Italy, and Japan. This political position was supported by the fact that the population of Argentina is largely of European descent. People from Great Britain, France, Italy, Germany, and other European countries settled in Argentina in the centuries following the colonization by the Spaniards in 1562. Due to the changing political environment, Argentina had no real economic alternatives but to trade with both the Allies and the Axis. Argentina sold canned goods, cattle, and fresh fruit to both sides. The benefit of neutrality for Argentina centered mainly around cultural ties to Europe and financial gain for Argentina from all the major participants of the war. Important elements in the Argentine military had also convinced themselves that Germany would win the war. This, along with ethnic ties to Germany and desire for the greater financial gain, started to sway Argentina towards providing more support to the Axis powers, specifically Germany. Argentina took steps to begin the shift away from neutrality. We can think of these as four major offenses. The first offense took place in the early part of 1940, when Argentina's government implemented a school curriculum that involved teaching the Argentine children the Nazi beliefs in regards to Jews and the Aryan race. While this was happening, the adult population was starting to split its outlook on neutrality, some wanting to force Argentina to become a Nazi-supporting country, while others wanted Argentina to only sell food to the Allies. The struggle between the Argentinian people and their government was not known to the Allies until several years later. Argentina followed this with its second offense. It became known that Argentina had been sheltering Gestapo, Nazi police agents. After a formal apology to the Allies, Argentina sent an additional message of neutrality by providing approximately 7,800 Argentine troops to train and fight for Great Britain. 3,000 Argentinians were sent to Canada to train and become part of the RAF, Royal Air Force. The RAF accepted them and even created an entire unit specifically for the Argentine airmen. Another 4,000 Argentinians fought in the British military, and 800 volunteered for air combat. However, these offerings did not prepare the world for what Argentina did next. In 1942, Argentina committed its third major offense. About 30 German U-boats, undersea boats, had been positioned alongside the Argentinian coast. This irresponsible act outraged the Allies. This black fleet of U-boats could have attacked Allied interests at any time, possibly turning the tide of the war. On August 2, 1944, Great Britain's Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, stated to the House of Commons, "We all must feel deep regret and also anxiety, as friends of Argentina, that in this testing time of nations she has not seen fit to declare herself wholeheartedly and unmistakably, with no reserve and qualification, on the side of freedom, and has chosen to dally with evil. And also not only with evil, but with the losing side. Nations must be judged by the parts they play. Not only belligerents but neutrals will find that their position in the world will not remain entirely unaffected by the part they may have chosen to play in the crisis of war. A few weeks later, on September 29, 1944, Franklin Roosevelt made the following statement on Argentina. I subscribe wholeheartedly to the words of Prime Minister Churchill in the House of Commons on August 2nd, when he declared that this is not like some small wars in the past, where all could be forgotten and forgiven. Nations must be judged by the parts they play. Not only belligerents but neutrals will find that their position in the world cannot remain entirely unaffected by the part they have chosen to play in the crisis of war. After the news of U-boats in Argentinian waters became public, Argentina's people questioned their government's choices, but kept quiet, giving up the right to let their voices be heard for fear of forever being silenced by their government's growing power. 1943 brought about the downfall of Argentinian President Ramon Castillo and the rise to power of Juan Domingo Perón. Perón had spent his formative years attending a German-based military school in Argentina and had also completed a military assignment in Germany and Italy. This personal history was influential in his favoring of the Germans. Perón's government further shifted Argentina's support towards the Axis. Perón had allowed prominent Nazi refugees to go into hiding behind the curtain of lies propagated by Argentina. After the war was over in 1944, thousands of Nazis still had huge price tags on their heads and were being hunted down by Allied forces. President Juan Perón committed a fourth major offense by giving over 9,000 Nazi war criminals the opportunity of a lifetime. Perón offered these war criminals safe haven in Argentina to escape prosecution. Notable amongst these thousands were Dr. Joseph Mengele. He was accused of conducting horrific genetic experiments on concentration camp prisoners. Adolf Eichmann, who was responsible for the trains that carried millions of Jews to their deaths. Walter Rauf, a high-ranking SS officer who invented the death trucks. Historians like Uki Goni have written about the thousands of Germans that escaped to Argentina with the help of Odessa, the German organization of former SS members.
When you think about Nazis hiding out in South America, you might first tend to think, well, they were hiding out in the jungle somewhere, surrounded by, bodyguards. They were living up somewhere high up on the Andes mountain range where nobody could reach them. The truth is, they were living right next door. For example, right now we're out here in the neighborhood of Olivos in the city of Buenos Aires, and this home actually is the home of the major war criminal who came to Argentina, Adolf Eichmann. Lived here in the 1950s.
Uki Goni himself shared this amazing quote with me. My hope is that my research into the escape of Nazis to Argentina after World War II will help us in Argentina and others around the world to realize that facing up to uncomfortable truths in the past is always preferable to brushing them under the carpet. What we know for an established and accepted fact can no longer come back to haunt us. All my best to student and staff at Escalante, and my congratulations to you, Dylan, for working on this project. Uki Goni. In conclusion, Argentina merely touted their position of neutrality during World War II for financial gain by providing supplies to both the Allies and the Axis countries, further siding with the Nazis over doubled the profits Argentina made had they remained truly neutral. The world has come to learn the deception of Argentina's so-called neutrality, and in my opinion, the actions of the Argentinian government could have changed the course of World War II and world history for the worse. This documentary relates to the 2014 National History Day theme of rights and responsibilities. The people of Argentina had the right to speak up against their government's choices. Fear of the government robbed the Argentinian people of this right. The Argentinian government lied to the world about their position of neutrality. They had the responsibility to keep their word, to remain neutral to both the Allied and the Axis powers. Instead, the government of both Perón and Castillo ignored this responsibility and chose financial gain instead.